All right, I'm Steve Bevilacqua with Combustion Service Company, factory rep for PVI. The first thing I want to touch base with, these units are instantaneous hot water units. They take steam pressure, convert it in this vessel here to the domestic hot water side of the unit. We have 212 degree steam entering the unit at this point, converts the water in this unit to 212 degrees as well. The water comes out this tapping. It's 190 degrees here. This is a heat trap. It drops down to 190 here. This first stage mixing valve, which is a non-electric thermostat, basically like a truck thermostat. It's a blending unit. It takes cold water in the bottom, 190 degree water in here, and it knocks it down to 160 degrees at the outlet. We then go to a secondary valve, drops the unit from 160 degrees to 140 degrees, which then hits our mixing valves. So we have a primary thermostat and a secondary thermostat. These two items are crucial to the operation of the unit. They're one of the only maintenance issues on the unit that specifically in the Boston-Cambridge area I've seen need to have service. I recommend annually. They tend to crust up a little bit due to the high chlorides in the water in the area. You can set up with a maintenance program with Combustion Service or through PVI and set something up, or you can order the thermostats and do them yourself in-house. That's entirely up to you. But those are the two units that I do recommend having at least a visual inspection yearly to see their condition. So we have primary, secondary. Let me jump right over here for 1 second. PVI has an outstanding reputation with warranty on their units. If you have any problems with these units at all, and they're not functioning properly, the first thing you want to do is get the model number and serial number. Model number is here, serial number is here. You want to have those available with you. There's an 800 number on the unit. Let me just see where the heck it is, if I can find it. Somewhere on this tag, there's an 800 number. And I can't seem to locate it.
Lucky it's not live TV.
Yeah, I guess, huh? I would have been going for my second retake.
Commercial?
Yeah, and cut. I don't see the 800 number. Usually there's an 800 number right on the tag on the unit.
Is it in the envelope by any chance?
It should also be in the envelope, but it's usually right here on the tag. There's usually a separate tag next to this one that just states for service, have model number and serial number available. And I'm not seeing that tag.
Well, we'll come up.
All right, we'll come up with it. Well, the 800 number is 1-800-433-5654. It is in the information and warranty packet. So if you have any problems with the unit at all, you want to have your model number and serial number available, call the 800 number, and they'll have all the history on when the unit was started up and any maintenance that's been done on the unit. So that's all there is about that. So like I was saying, we have a primary and secondary mixing valve, which just blends the water to our desired outgoing temperature. We have a temperature gauge on the outlet located here, which has given us our actual outlet temperature. We have a safety device here, which is a solenoid valve, which is wired across two aquastats, sensing the outlet temperature of the first stage and outlet temperature of the second stage blending valves. If they go 15 degrees over the set point, then they will snap shut this fast-acting valve and eliminate any hot water from leaving the unit. So that is the safety devices for high limit temperature on the unit. They're just a safety device. Under normal conditions, nothing electrically is happening with this unit. It's just running. It's just converting steam to water and running the water through the unit. They do require a minimum flow through the unit, which is taking place right now through this hot water recirc, but we also have a PVI supplied stratification pump here, which is going to maintain that minimum flow through the unit, which now negates the purpose of running these pumps 24/7. These can actually be run on desired set point, and this one here will take care of the minimum flow required through the unit. So as long as we have a minimum flow through the unit and we have the required steam flow to the unit, which is 50 psi of steam, which we're putting in right now, which is indicated on an overhead gauge, there is nothing else electronically that's happening. The only time anything electronically happens is if there's a problem. This is a single wall heat exchanger, and according to Mass Code, you have to have safety devices on a single wall heat exchanger so that if the steam pressure and the water pressure ever come within 5 psi of each other, it will shut the unit down, close the hot water outlet, and evacuate the steam to the vessel instantly. To do that, we have a pressure differential switch, which is located right here. This pressure differential switch is sensing the water pressure through this line right here and the steam pressure through this line right here through a heat trap. And as long as the steam pressure and the water pressure never come within 5 pounds of each other, this unit is just going to run. If they come within 5 pounds of each other, in other words, if you shut off the water to the building and the water pressure drops down and it gets down below 50 psi, then it's going to activate a time delay relay because they don't want nuisance calls. If there's ever a quick dip or a problem where a pump goes to generator and there's a small dip in the pressure, we don't want that to cause a nuisance problem. If they should stay for extended period of time within 5 psi of each other, this will close this solenoid valve. It will isolate this pilot valve, which closes the main steam valve to the unit, and open a dump valve, which is located right here. That will take the steam that's in the unit and dump it to the floor drain. Under normal conditions, that won't happen, except if you have an issue. So once that happens, that would require a reset of this reset button right here. And this alarm light would come on, and this reset would require to be reset once you've got your water pressure or your steam pressure problem back to normal. So that's the alarm light, that's the reset, that's the pressure differential switch, which I've pretty much explained in detail. This is the isolation for electricity to the unit. Obviously that needs to stay on. We also have a temperature gauge for our inlet water, which is being cycled through the hot water recirc line back to the unit. And like I said, we need to have a minimum flow. There is a check valve on the cold water supply line located here, and our hot water recirc line, which is located here. And that's about all there really is to the unit. There is a steam trap in the main line, which is required. We have strainers protecting the Hoffman valve in the main line, so there should be no issues as far as getting any sediment caught under here. The only maintenance that like I said, that I've seen on the units are these mixing valves. They do tend to, over time, need to be inspected. The only other thing I've seen is sometimes the pilot valve. If there is a problem and this thing dumps once or twice, I have seen small particles get caught under the seat, and you would notice that by getting a little weep of steam out of the drain line. But as long as we're not having any reason for that to open or close, it should be a non-issue. But it's just something to keep an eye on. And that's really all there is to the units. The second unit is exactly the same as the first. They can be used individually of each other. Under normal application, this is a skid. This is all online and operating, functioning properly. If you had a problem with one, you could shut one of the switches off, isolate one bank, and run off of one.
So they both run simultaneously, they don't cycle?
Nope, they're manifolded together, and like I said, under normal conditions, there's no limiting devices that are clicking, no electronics that are clicking on and off. All it's doing is blending through here, sending out your tempered water to where your set point is. There's no set point to change on these. There's no dial or anything to change the outlet temperature. It's all done through this mixing valve. So there's nothing really for you to change. If you wanted to make a small adjustment to change it, you could close the second stage blending valve. This is the cold water to the second stage blending valve. If you wanted to get a couple of degrees, you could close that. There is a hole drilled in it, so it will maintain the minimum flow. Right. If you close that all the way, you can get maybe 2 to 4 degrees differential in that, but that's about all you're going to get. And that's about all there is to them. They're pretty straightforward. So.
As far as the pressure differential switch there, you said an extended period of time. So if the pressure goes down for what, 30 minutes? Or?
No, more. It's an adjust. There is an adjustment. You have
Oh, there is.
you have a half a minute to 10 minutes
Oh,
on a
okay.
dial.
It's only like 2 or 3 minutes.
On,
Oh, yeah, all right.
It's dumped on me during some of the, we've been doing a lot of changes, adjusting some stuff, you shut something off, she'll dump if
Yeah.
you don't shut the power down.
All right.
it's just a small. It's not like a 30-minute. It's
All
not,
right,
not
all right.
gonna
I was
not
just
gonna let you go
wondering.
that long. It's really meant just for small spikes for
Yes.
nuisance issues. It's not really meant, for a half-hour time frame. So there is an adjustment on there. I don't recommend getting into touching it. It's
All right.
factory set. It's where they want it,
Yeah.
and it's not something you really want to be
Good, yeah.
moving around. So if you have any other questions, that's really all there is to the unit. The only other thing we have is a subcooler light, and all that's do is indicating that we have power to our stratification circulator, and that's what they're calling that as a subcooler. And all that's doing is just taking the, just going from the hot outlet to the cold inlet and maintaining a minimum flow. And that's just indicating that our circulator is powered and functioning. And that's really all there is to it. If you have any other questions,
The only thing I wanted to add to that, Steve, was that this particular duplex system serves everything from the basement to the ceiling of the 3rd floor. That's the low zone. Doesn't go to 4. 4 is controlled by the high zone, and we'll go there next.
any other questions? If not, then we're ready to go to the high zone units. Okay, I just want to reiterate that PVI has an outstanding reputation backing their product. If there's any issues with the unit while it's under the warranty, which is a minimum of 1 year, prorated warranties can be bought. If you have any questions about how much warranty is left on the unit or what the status is of the warranty, you can find all that information by dialing the 800 number located on this tag. The model number and serial number are also on the tag. You want to make sure you have model number, serial number available with you when you make the call to the 800 number, and they'll be able to tell you what the status of the warranty is, the whole history of the unit, what's been done, when it was started up, and everything else, when it was manufactured, shipped, and whatnot. So that's the tag that you'd want to have for any of that information. It's also listing the BTU rating of the unit and the part number of the unit. You really don't need that. You just need model number, serial number, and dial that 800 number, and they'll have everything on the computer. And that's all I got back here. We can then move to the front of the unit and go over the rest of it. All right, this is the 4th floor mechanical room. This is a location of the high zone units, which is the same, only different BTU ratings as the low zone units. These two units operate in tandem, just like the units downstairs. They're just a little bit larger in BTU ratings. And these are taking from the 4th floor all the way to 11. So that would be the high zone units. They operate the same as the low zone units. We have our incoming medium pressure steam. The units require 50 psi of steam pressure, which can be indicated on this gauge, which is right at 50 psi, so everything there is working fine. The steam then enters the unit through this Hoffman steam valve, which is then controlled by the pilot solenoid, which is tied as a safety across the operating aquastats and the pressure differential switch, which we reviewed in the low zone units. I'll just go over that again completely if you want. It's up to you if you want to. They're exactly the same. I'll do that. The cold water enters the unit through a check valve at the bottom of the unit, comes into the unit. We have, under normal conditions, we have 50 psi of steam pressure going into the unit. The steam pressure transfers the heat to the water side of the unit, which then leaves this 90-degree tapping at the top, goes through a heat trap, goes to our first stage mixing valve. This one's much larger than the one downstairs just due to the BTU ratings required on this unit, but it's the same setup as downstairs. There's a non-electric blending valve in here, which is one of the only things that I do recommend is inspected annually, just to make sure that it's functioning properly. So we go through our first stage blending valve. Our temperature is mixed with our cold water, goes up through a solenoid valve to our secondary blending valve located further up in the back. Let me just grab my tape measure to use as a pointer. Secondary blending valve is located up in the back. It's the same thing as the front. if you were looking to order any replacement ones, which I do recommend to have a set on hand, at least one set for this skid and one set for the skid downstairs, because they are different between the two. I recommend having a second set on hand. They're available through PVI, and I do recommend having them on hand if it's usually the most common place that you would ever have any issues. So it's good to have one of each, and they're different. This one here is the first stage, the other one is the second stage. The information is available right on the tag to order replacements. So I recommend having at least one first stage and one second stage for this skid, and the same thing downstairs, one for the first stage and one for the second stage. So we leave the second stage blending valve. There's a gauge letting us know what our outlet temperature is, right up at the top of the unit, right up here. We have primary and secondary aquastats that are functioning only as a safety. If we should have any high limit temperatures, 15 degrees over the set points on these blending valves, these will trip. They will close this fast acting solenoid valve and stop hot water flow out of the unit, so there's no scald issues. We also have, just like the other units, we have a differential pressure switch, which is sensing on one side through a heat trap the steam pressure, and on the other side the water pressure. If the water pressure comes within 5 pounds of each other, a time delay relay will energize. We'll give it the set point, which is about 2 minutes on these units. If the pressure differential does not go back outside of the 5 PSI set point, it will trip. This alarm light will come on. It will close this solenoid valve. It will de-energize this pilot valve, which will shut the steam to the downstream side of the unit, and it will open up this solenoid valve, which will evacuate all the steam from the unit, which is required by Mass State Code on a single wall heat exchanger. If that should happen, you will get a shot of steam out of this discharge line. It should only be instantaneous while from this point downstream the steam is evacuated. This valve will close, we'll get a shot of steam out of here, then that should stop. The unit will be offline until the situation is restored and this reset button is pressed. The alarm light right here indicates that this relay did energize and the unit was tripped for some reason. The other light is the subcooler light. That is indicating that this circulator here is functioning. This circulator is simply taking the condensate from the downstream of the F&T floating thermostatic trap, going through a plate type heat exchanger and cycling from the cold water inlet back into the unit. So all it's doing is just soaking up every BTU we can out of the energy that we're using. We're just taking the condensate return water, cycling water across into a plate type heat exchanger, getting some more temperature out of that and putting it back into the unit. That is tied across, electrically tied across the unit. It functions on its own. There should be no issues with that. As long as this light is on, that means that that is functioning and running properly. We reviewed where the 800 number was for any warranty service. The only real issues that I recommend are to have these on hand, one of each of these to have on hand. I do recommend once a year to have them open for inspection. That's up to you. That can be scheduled through PVI or through Combustion Services or Tower Hill Sales, whichever way you want to go about it. And that's really all there is to the units. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them for you.
No, I think it's great. You showed us everything we need to know.
Okay, let me just go over one more thing. There is a vacuum breaker located on these units. That is something else that over time you may want to just, if you ever get any steam weeping out of it, it may be time to change it. Under normal conditions, we always have 50 PSI of steam coming through this unit, but if for any reason this thing is shut down, steam is shut down to it, that vacuum breaker might function and where it would drop open close. If you start getting a wisp of steam, then you might have to change it, just like any steam vacuum breaker anywhere else on any other unit. And that's about all there is to it. There's the on-off switch located here, and the temperature and pressure relief valve is located here, and that this is the discharge line. If there was ever a pressure situation exceeding the set point on the label, you would get your water dumping right out of this
this line right here. That's about all there is to it.
Nice. Probably a good idea to have one of those on hand as well.
Yes, I would recommend it.
Right.
Not a bad idea to have one on hand.